always a delight to be in a room with libertarians. You guys are like my intellectual family, and I'm always very happy to be here. I want to start off with a confession. I am a member of one of America's most disruptive and destructive cartels in the history of this country. It's the healthcare cartel. And it is a government-supported cartel that is robbing each and every one of you of thousands of dollars per year. It's inhibiting the quality of medical care that you receive. It's inhibiting the progress of medical science. And ultimately, it's shortening your lifespan. Now, a lot of people in the 2016 election decided that they would vote for Donald Trump because they wanted smaller government, and they didn't feel that our candidate, Governor Gary Johnson, had a chance to win. They told us that they'd be wasting their vote if they voted for the most qualified candidate with the best ideas. They really wanted to repeal Obamacare and fix health care. I'll have news for the Trump voters out there. You wasted your vote. You see, health care in America is like a train headed for a cliff. Before the Affordable Care Act, it was going about 185 miles an hour, nearing the cliff of financial and humanitarian crisis. After the Affordable Care Act, the train went faster. 195 miles an hour, the cliff getting ever closer. And people getting very desperate and very frustrated, listening to con men like Bernie Sanders tell them that everything will be all right as long as we allow bureaucrats to take over the system. Well, the reality is that as long as we allow bureaucrats to continue to be involved in the system, and as long as we allow the cartels to maintain their power, that train is going to speed up and get closer to the cliff. Eventually it's going to go off the cliff, and we're going to have a very, very rough time here in the United States. And I'm standing here today before the one group of people who can save us, libertarians. So I'd like to give you guys an overview of why healthcare is in crisis in America, and why it is that only libertarian ideas can bring us out of this crisis. So it's a pretty bold claim to say I'm a member of a cartel, of a destructive and vicious cartel, but it is absolutely true. In economic terms, a cartel is a group of businesses who work together to control the market, keep out competitors, and drive up prices. And here in Hawaii, we've seen a very high-profile fight with cartels, which has gone in a very good way. And I'm talking about Uber and taxi drivers. Taxi drivers in Hawaii created a cartel by lobbying for a licensing scheme that made the barrier to entry to the taxi profession very high. And as a result, prices for taxis were high. The quality of service people received was low. And then something miraculous happened. Ride-sharing hit the scene. And all of a sudden you could get out your phone and a friendly driver at a low price would pick you up and take you to your destination. Everyone was very happy. This exploded. Everybody started using Uber and Lyft. And the taxi cartels got very mad. And they went to the government and they said, hey, these guys don't have background checks. How do we know they have good insurance? How do we know they're qualified drivers? How do we know their cars are safe? You have to protect consumers from the ravages of the free market. Meanwhile, consumers were saying, hey, don't make us get back into those dirty, disgusting taxis with the rude drivers who overcharge us. And there was a lot of legislative fighting. I just flew in from Santiago de Chile last night, and for the first time ever, landing at the Honolulu International Airport, I was able to get an Uber at the airport. That was a victory over the cartels. But my profession is a cartelized profession as well. It's very hard to become a medical doctor, and even harder to get a license to practice medicine. And most people would say, well, gosh, we need licensure boards to keep unqualified practitioners out of practice. The reality is that there are plenty of unqualified practitioners practicing with their medical licenses. But But the other reality is that there are plenty of very qualified people who can't practice medicine. And when they can't practice medicine, you have situations like we have here in the state of Hawaii, where our neighbor islands especially can't find doctors. And so people go for months and months on waiting lists, trying to get the medical care that they need. Meanwhile, there are hundreds and hundreds, thousands and thousands of doctors, both in the United States and out of the United States, perfectly qualified to help them, but they can't do it. And prices go up. Now, I went to a foreign medical school. Basically, I didn't get very good grades in college, and so I wasn't going to get into a United States medical school where they only accept 10 to 20% of the applicants. So I went overseas, and I really buckled down and I studied very hard. And then I passed the licensure exam along with a lot of my friends and colleagues, and did clinical rotations in the United States, passed another couple of licensure exams, and then I applied for residency, and I was very thankful to get a residency here in Hawaii, and this is the place where I learned to practice medicine. But many of my friends did not obtain residencies. They went through the same training as me. They got passing scores on all of the licensing exams, and today they don't work in healthcare. Why is it that these people who have gone through all of the requisite training and passed the exams can't work in healthcare? Well, it turns out that there's an organization called the ACGME, the American Council on Graduate Medical Education, that accredits residency programs. There are a lot of requirements for a residency program that make the cost to educate a resident higher than $200,000 for a typical residency. It's something that a private hospital is just not going to pay for. Now that's fine, because Medicare pays for it. But in the mid-90s, the American Medical Association, in conjunction with Congress, said, hey, we have an oversupply of doctors. And there was a budget crisis, and they said, why don't we cap the number of residencies that are funded by Medicare, thereby capping the number of doctors who can actually go on to get a medical license. And so they did that. They capped the number of residents. And now we're suffering under a system where we have a severe doctor shortage, especially in our rural areas, and people are dying. Everyone here in this room knows that supply and demand are what determine prices, and that scarcity drives profits. If you're able to create artificial scarcity in your profession, whether that is driving taxis or whether that's treating patients, you can drive up your prices and you can drive up your profits. But doctors aren't the only tentacle on this evil octopus of cartels. Hospitals are very, very guilty, especially here in the state of Hawaii. What if I told you that if you own a hospital in the state of Hawaii, anyone who wanted to open a new hospital to compete with you would essentially have to get your permission? That is the effect of a certificate of need law. And we have them here in Hawaii. So Maui went through a very long process, greater than 10 years, of trying to get a certificate of need law to get a second hospital. And in fact, in most of the United States, people are operating under certificate of need laws. And what you have, as a result, is a shortage of hospital beds. So about 8 months ago, I was working overnight at a tertiary care facility in Washington State. And I had a critically ill patient come in, very critically ill. I needed to intubate that patient, put central lines in that patient, have this person on vasopressors. It was a very seriously ill person on the doorstep of death. And so I told the nursing staff, the bed manager, hey, I need an ICU bed for this patient. She said, sorry, we don't have any available. Sometimes this happens. So I got on the phone and started calling around. And what I found was that there wasn't a critical care bed available in the entire city. So I had to make the very difficult decision. Do I put this person on the doorstep of death on an airplane and send them across the state? Or do I manage their critical illness in the ER where we don't have as much expertise and we don't have as many of the appropriate resources? And in that case I said, well, I don't think they're going to make it if I put them on an airplane. So I managed them in the ER, and luckily they did all right. That person ended up walking out of the hospital, but it could have been very different. And the point is that certificate of need laws are the root cause of a bed shortage And that bed shortage happens here in Oahu too. I've had instances where when I was a resident here, where we have been scrambling to find, for example, a bed for someone who is bleeding in their head. And people are calling around to hospital, hey, do you have a bed? Do you have nursing staff? The bed shortage is everywhere. People are dying. People are dying because of cronyism. And this is how it always works out. The government comes in and partners with private interests. They say we're going to keep the public safe, we're going to manage the system and implement top-down controls. And what happens is the private interests get very happy because they're restricting supply and creating scarcity and driving record profits. So let's talk about another area of record profits. Health insurance companies have been more profitable in the last several years than they've been in the history of their enterprise. It's mandatory to buy health insurance. If you can't afford it, the government will subsidize it for you. Prices have been skyrocketing. It's been busting household budgets. And the kind of insurance products most people are getting are incredibly subpar, with deductibles that are through the roof, with restricted networks, with the insurance company telling you who your doctor is. And allegedly, this was somehow the democratic solution to healthcare. And interestingly, it's still in place now under a Republican administration with a Republican Congress. The Libertarians have a better solution. Anybody here have had laser eye surgery? I had it about a year ago. And it was a great experience. And it became available in 1999. And in 1999, it costs roughly $3,000 an eye. Now today, if you go to Groupon.com, you can find a deal for perhaps $700 an eye. The price of laser eye surgery has gone down dramatically. If you want liposuction or breast augmentation, the price has gone down when you compare it to inflation over time. And yet, if you have appendicitis, the price has gone up. If you have diabetes, the price has gone up. Just your insulin can bankrupt you. Why have the prices for certain services gone down so dramatically, meaning that at one time they were accessible only to the wealthy, and now even relatively poor people can afford them? And other services, really necessary services, have skyrocketed in price. And the answer is because there's a functioning market in healthcare for laser eye surgery and for plastic surgery, and there isn't a functioning market for things like appendicitis treatment, diabetes treatment, and so forth. The problem is third-party payers. What's a third-party payer? Insurance, exactly. So when I go to the doctor, when you go to the doctor, you don't pay the bill. The doctor says, well, you should get this test, that test, the other test, and then the insurance company basically foots the bill. No one in the entire process except the insurance company is thinking about the price. So if I want to go for laser eye surgery, I'm going to call up a couple of doctors who do that procedure, and I'm going to say, hey, what do you charge? Okay, how much experience do you have? Okay, what kind of a warranty do you offer? I literally asked my laser eye surgeon what kind of a warranty he offers, and he told me that if I had any problems for the first 2 years, I could come back for free. I mean, you're not going to find a general surgeon who offers such a warranty after appendicitis. So we have a functioning market. Why don't we have a functioning market in healthcare in America? Well, the story starts in World War II, when wage and price controls were implemented to keep factory workers' wages down to fund the war effort. Factory owners had a hard time retaining employees, and as a result, they created health plans that were not subject to the wage and price controls. And they said, we're going to pay for all your health care. We're going to bundle it all together so we can raise your wages. That became the standard. And then Medicare came on the scene, and Medicare did a very similar thing, paying for everything. At first it didn't pay for everything, but little by little they bundled everything together. And Blue Cross and Blue Shield, the insurance companies, were able to obtain special tax treatment for health care benefits paid through your employer. And so the incentive was there to bundle everything into these health care plans. This drove dramatic inflation, well above the general inflation, so that today almost $9,700 per person is what we in America spend for healthcare, despite the fact that most developed countries spend about half that and get similar outcomes. I like to say that Medicare as a program is perhaps the largest, at very least one of the largest transfers of wealth from the poor and the middle classes to the wealthy in American history. You've taxed everyone on any income they have. You've given it to doctors, you've given it to giant hospitals, and you've driven tremendous inflation such that even moderately wealthy people are tremendously stressed by their health care. So let's talk about the solution. After the tremendous failure that the grotesque authoritarian regime the Republicans have installed in Washington in regards to reforming health care has played out in Washington, it's imminently clear to me that the solution to health care runs through the Libertarian Party. We're the ones who will restore a market. We're the ones who can say to voters, look, with us, you have a very good chance of having health insurance premiums that run less than $100 a month. The Republicans, you see, want to keep the system largely as it is, where you have a bureaucrat and an insurance company executive standing between you and your doctor. The Democrats are offering a reform to that system. They'd like to take that insurance company executive and replace him with a second bureaucrat and putting those two between you and your doctor. The Libertarians are saying no. You should have a direct relationship with your doctor. Your health care should be affordable. We should have dramatic innovation and great customer service. Free markets can offer that. You know, when I was growing up, these things, cell phones didn't exist, and now even the poor in America have them. Markets create wonderful things. I'd like to see it happen in healthcare. I think everyone in this room would like to see that happen in healthcare, and I think we can do that. When we talk about the poor and the indigent in healthcare, we have to realize that it's very easy to help people out and subsidize them when the services are cheap. When the services become expensive, it starts stressing entire financial systems. And that's why I say, if we keep going in the direction we're going, we have an insolvent system. The train is going to run off the cliff. The money is not going to be there, and bureaucrats will start making healthcare rationing decisions, just like they do in the United Kingdom. If you have macular degeneration in both eyes in the United Kingdom and you're relatively elderly, maybe above 70 years old, their very compassionate socialized healthcare system will tell you, hey, pick an eye. What's your better eye? Okay, we'll fix it. And because we're very compassionate, we'll give you a taxpayer-funded eye patch for the eye we're not going to fix. This is bureaucratic compassion, political self-interest. And I don't mean to pretend that health insurance companies are angels. They're not. They are self-interested people who give very poor service to their customers. But in a free market where you can choose different health insurance agencies and where the services are cheap so that the majority of your care is paid for by cash out of your own pocket, the power goes back to you, the patient. And that's the only way you're going to have any security or any control. So the question is, under the Republicans, bureaucrats combined with insurance executives. Under the Democrats, bureaucrats combined with bureaucrats. Under the Libertarians, the patient is in control. It's very clear to me that we are the ones with the solution. And in 2018, I hope we can all go out there during the campaign season and tell the American people that we have a real solution to our healthcare crisis. It's through the Libertarian Party, and we can set America free, and we can make America healthy again.